and then I'll come on board.
No, sir, you are the expert
Oh,
today.
okay.
We're the rookies in the room.
My apologies for that one. All right. Well, let me just say, I want to say good afternoon to everyone who was here attending the meeting this afternoon in person. Those of you hanging out at Walk-Ons, do me a favor, please have one of those Boudin balls for me. The food there is delicious. Also, greetings to those of you joining us online or those watching a replay at a later date. I want to thank you for attending this afternoon session discussing workplace stresses and their impact on employees amid COVID-19. I also want to thank the ASP South Texas chapter leadership team, including Zach and Karen and Larry. You guys have been great helping put this together. And thank you so much for inviting me to have the opportunity to speak to our colleagues in the safety field about this very important subject. Just wanted to give you some information about myself. Again, my name is Lee Little. I am the founder and president of Premier Workforce Training, LLC. We are an end-to-end workforce training and development provider with a focus on adult learning space. We provide a strategic methodology for addressing what we call the fivefold professional skills development areas of health and safety, risk management, customer experience, team building, and leadership skills. We offer our clients a customized, highly engaging, performance-based, and learner-centric training experience. I have over 25 years of safety management and workforce development and training experience, extending across various industries, including the medical, industrial, and transportation industries. I've worked at the federal, state, local, corporate, and nonprofit sectors. I'm a decorated Air Force veteran. That's where I got my safety experience and my start in it. My first duty station was Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota. The slogan up there is "Why not Minot? Freezing's the reason. 40 below keeps the riffraff out." Okay, and yeah, 40 below, yeah, no homeless problem. As I said before, I'm a decorated Air Force vet. I've managed employee health and safety programs, protecting anywhere as few as 400 to over 9,000 employees. I also have tens of thousands of hours of training and facilitating classes in person and online. At Premier Workforce Training, we offer a range of valued added collaborative services that include the production of and development of customized training videos and presentations and learning curriculum designed around the specific needs of our customers and their employees. To take a look at what we have to offer, we've got this short video for you.
About what happens that some of these different platforms have to download be a certain way to get sound, but indirectly we don't get sound.
Go ahead and review this.
Hey, Lee.
Yes.
I don't want to interrupt it, but we're not getting sound. And I checked with some other people and they're not getting sound right now.
They're not getting any sound.
No, and we had it earlier. So when you opened your tray, did you click on that share?
Yes, I sure did. Yeah, I checked all my connections and everything is as it was before.
Yeah, we hear you. We just don't hear the video.
Okay, no problem. Let me go ahead and continue on. Alrighty. So During today's presentation, we're going to discuss the impact of workplace stresses, uh, brought about by various factors amid COVID-19 pandemic and the impact on the health and safety of employees. We're also going to examine the unique challenges COVID-19 has forced businesses to confront and discuss the important role you as a safety professional play in recognizing causes of workplace stress, understanding the effects stress has on employees and the business, and identifying what your organization can do in order to reduce stress in the workplace. As part of this, the challenges and situations, the standards that govern businesses related to health and safety, they're going to vary. As everyone was doing their introduction, I could see that everyone is in different types of businesses. Therefore, the presentations for informational purposes only. As part of the process for the development or modification of any of your company's policies and procedures, speak to your organizations, the legal counsel, your human resources department, safety, union representative, and your trusted health professionals in order to ensure that your organization is compliant with all federal, state, local laws, rules, and regulations. So let's take a look. What is stress? Now I know we've got people in the comments. Larry, can the people in the audience hear me clearly still?
Yes, sir.
All right. So
fine.
what is stress? Let's get some audience participation. Go ahead, chime in.
When the audio and the video doesn't work with what's going on with the TV.
Okay, well, Larry, share some of the responses. What are people saying? What is stress?
What is stress? It's asking the audience to participate.
What's the question?
What is stress? It has great vacuum was one comment.
That's great vacuum, okay.
Hey, Lee, this is Damon Shadrock.
Yes. Larry.
Yes.
We've got a gentleman online that wants to respond.
Yeah, Larry. So for me, workplace stress is having a level of work and like an inability to manage or foster a
Okay. Alrighty. Now, think about this for a moment. Is there something we should be concerned with? Is stress something you guys think we should be concerned with?
Yes.
Yes, of course. That is definitely something we need to be concerned with. Stress is something that exists within your workplace, and it's something you should not only be aware of, but it's something you should be concerned with as a safety professional. Job stress is one of those intangible factors, as I like to revert to it. It's a safety culprit that exists in the workplace that steals valuable time, energy, and resources from your business. Let's face it, everyone's bottom lines are tight. So everything you do to positively impact your company's bottom line demonstrates the value-added dimension of the safety department to your company. If you're not doing that, then you need to ask yourself, why are you there before someone else does? Although workplace stresses are not as visible as a missing piece of personal protective equipment, or an obvious slip, trip, and fall hazard, or even a powered industrial truck being operated in an unsafe manner, yet it is just as real and has the potential to have just as much impact on the health and safety of your employees in the workplace. Challenges facing businesses due to COVID-19 pandemic are highlighted the importance of you as a safety professional. First, in recognizing stressors in the workplace. Second, understanding the impact these stressors can have on employees. And third, identifying and implementing steps to address stressors in an effort to protect your employees as well as protecting your company. Now, what's the nature of the impact? Understanding the impact of COVID-19 and the associated stressors generally impacts your employees in one of two ways, either in the cumulative or additive fashion. Cumulative in the fact that the stressors and their impact have been building up over time, or additive in the fact that some of your employees have been experiencing multiple effects from differing sources of workplace stress. Keep in mind, this may date back as far as March of 2020 when the lockdowns began. Just like when a piece of equipment is under stress, when people are placed under stress, there is an exponential increase in the opportunities and potential for that person to break down. But unlike a piece of equipment, simply replacing a belt, a hose, installing a new set of fuses, or even changing out the battery won't be enough to help some of your employees overcome by the impact of workplace stress. Can you guys still hear me good? Everyone doing okay?
Doing great.
All right.
We hear you fine.
Outstanding. So, an article published in USA Today titled Great Resignation examined why so many able-bodied Americans were choosing to leave their jobs and drop out of the workforce. What they learned about workplace stresses on employees was very interesting and revealing, and it should cause your business to take pause. For instance, some employees resign due to fears of exposure to or contracting COVID-19. A number of individuals, as you can imagine, were in customer facing positions within the hotel or restaurant industry, or even in the medical industry. These individuals were afraid of and stressed out about contracting COVID and taking it back home to either their spouse or children, or even their elderly parents or other family members, and the potential risks COVID faced for them. While others quit because they were simply burned out by the level of stress they felt due to their workload. With CDC restrictions mandating that an employee testing positive not return to work for at least 2 weeks, the employees who remained at the job were forced to pick up the workload. Although businesses were doing everything they could to bring on board new employees, we understand that that takes time. So after a while no significant changes in the horizon appeared, those employees that stayed behind were began quitting because they couldn't take the long hours and demanding workload caused by personnel shortages. And of course, this led to that proverbial domino effect. Other employees had concerns about the viability of their companies between COVID lockdowns and restrictions, partial openings, mask mandates, and immunization mandates, on and on. They weren't sure if they were going to have a job or if the business was going to survive in this type of economic climate. And they had their own personal concerns about working reduced hours, reduced pay, paying bills, medical care, child care, and keeping food on the table, especially with food prices on the rise. So they began to resign, while others took on new job opportunities. Those same opportunities came with their own inherent stresses. As you know, as safety and training professionals, depending upon the individual's learning curve, it takes time for an untrained or unskilled employee to be upskilled and become a productive and impactful member of the team. And let's be honest, we've all had that experience. If you've been in the safety field for any length of time, you've experienced those situations where you were asked to compromise your standard or traditional training and development timelines and protocols in an effort to get the new employees out onto the production field sooner and faster. Well, that may well put a warm body, quote unquote, out into the field in a faster time frame, but what has it really done is unnecessarily increase the workplace stress on an undertrained or underdeveloped, unskilled employee, increasing the likelihood that they'll either injure themselves, someone else, or damage a piece of equipment. And the daily stress they feel due to their uncertainty decreases the likelihood that they'll remain with the company for any length of time, thereby perpetuating the domino effect of employees leaving, leading to other employees leaving, not to mention the cost and time and resources associated with trying to fill a single job posting. These days, every pseudo expert's favorite buzzword they love to toss around is corporate culture. What is just that's just a fancy way of companies describing who we are, how we see ourselves, how we treat each other internally, and how we treat our customers externally. So ask yourself, is your corporate culture contributing to workplace stress on your employees? Take, for example, the case of Rogel Aguilera Mederos. Now, some of you probably saw this situation on the news, especially those of you who work in the transportation field. At the time of his accident, he was just 23 years old. He was a commercial Class A driver who lost control of his big rig while hauling lumber on a downhill grade on Interstate 70 in Colorado. That resulted in a fiery accident involving 28 vehicles, in which 4 people died and several others were injured. He was originally sentenced to 110 years in prison. But after a petition garnered over 5 million signatures on his behalf about the injustice of the sentence, the Colorado governor ended up pardoning, commuting his prison term to just 10 years. But when we take a look at the circumstances surrounding the accident, during the trial, the prosecution stated Mr. Medeiros failed to make several critical decisions on multiple occasions, which all contributed to his accident. Some of the questions raised during the trial were about his training, his abilities, his confidence, and his experience level in handling that type of load with that type of vehicle on that type of roadway. Mr. Medeiros was heard to have made the statement uh, that he was afraid of taking the emergency off ramp. Again, those of you in transportation, and even if you've driven on the highways here in Texas, especially driving in West Texas, you've seen those emergency off ramps that are specifically designed for commercial vehicles that may lose control. There's issue with brake fade or brake failure, and it gives the driver an opportunity to exit the road in a safe manner. Well, he felt he wasn't confident enough in order to use the emergency off ramps that existed on the highway in order to prevent the accident from taking place. One of the many factors, can anyone say supply chain, which led to this? Or how about a lack of truck drivers to transport loads across the country? Think of the stress that Mr. Medeiros must have felt under every day he went to work, driving on those winding, mountainous Colorado highways, knowing when he gets behind the wheel, he literally has the lives of other people in his hands, and yet he doesn't feel confident. Keep in mind, he's not the only one. This is where you, as the safety professional within your companies, have a huge impact on preventing similar accidents and situations. Now, millions of people who never thought about or even wanted to are working from home. While at the same time, their children are forced to stay at home and take online classes. So now, throughout the day, everyone is at home Zooming. Although it sounds more fun than it really is, the normal events that existed for families to get away and have a sense of release from the stresses of life have become completely taken away. Across the United States, hundreds of millions of citizens have been on some sort of level of lockdown or under mandates since March of 2020, and millions have seen the fabric of the social structure underneath them decay. No longer do people start work on Monday morning and daydream and begin focusing their thoughts on their plans for the weekend. With restaurants and theaters and churches and amusement parks and public venues being closed or placed on off limits, where they go, what are they to do? And that is impacting everyone in the family. The benefits of social interaction and development that the children experience as a normal part of going to school, attending classes, and playing with their friends was impacted by COVID-19 and social distancing requirements and lockdowns. Family gatherings and who spent time with whom have enveloped in fear and due to the potential of younger, healthier, asymptomatic family members unknowingly transmitting COVID to older family members that may be immune compromised or have comorbidities or have underlying health conditions. It's hard for the grandchildren in some cases to visit grandparents who may be living in retirement communities. So, COVID has challenged how businesses is done and lives are lived. The mandated shutdown of retail stores, restaurants, bars, and theaters, and a host of other businesses across the country has caused a very unique and dangerous confluence of events to occur. On one hand, there's an increased level of anxiety amongst employees associated with the fears of COVID 19. On the other hand, with businesses being mandated to close their doors and shut down, some closing their doors forever. And we're talking businesses that have been open for decades have now closed their doors for good. Those businesses no longer exist. There's been an increase in unemployment, financial instability, insecurity, shortages of grocery staples, and a lack of social interaction and contact. There's an increasing number of people who are falling victim to these accompanying stresses. Here in Texas, we've been very fortunate compared to other states where their lockdowns were at, to say the least, draconian. But that's not to say businesses and lives weren't negatively impacted here as well. People did lose their jobs. Businesses that had been open for generations did close their doors, and vacant storefronts can be seen everywhere. As people go about their daily lives, from their children going to school to sources of entertainment for the family to simple things that were once taken for granted, such things as church were turned upside down. So the stresses your employees experience at home compound the impact of the stresses they experienced at work. Every week, the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases the job opening and labor turnover summary, otherwise known as the JOLTS report. This weekly report shows the millions of people employed, unemployed, the number that quit their jobs, and the number of job openings. And as you can see, in October 2021, there were over 11 million job openings. And in November of 2021 alone, over 4.5 million employees quit their jobs. When those employees quit their jobs, what do you think was the impact on the businesses and the employees that continue to work at those companies? In the JOLTS report, there was also a breakdown of the number of employees quitting by industry. As I mentioned before, some of the employees facing the greatest level of workplace stress directly attributable to COVID-19 were customer-facing professions, such as those working in the restaurant and hotel industry, where in November 2021 alone, 920,000 employees in that industry quit their jobs. This is not over a year. This is in the month of November alone. Or how about those working in the health services industry, where 996,000 professionals in that industry quit their jobs? Remember, this is across the country in a single month. Imagine the stress on those businesses, the industries, their employees, created by the mass of people leaving their jobs, along with the other COVID-19 related stresses. As part of the Center for Disease Control, NIOSH, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, put out a publication identifying several impacts of workplace stress on the health and safety of employees. They've identified everything from cardiovascular disease and the effects of that, to musculoskeletal disorders, to psychological disorders. They've also identified other factors such as workplace injuries. Um, Although the study needs some more information to be gathered, they do say stress can contribute to your workplace industry, which should be one of those ding, ding, ding for us in the safety profession. You also have situations such as suicide, cancer, ulcers. So this is going to increase the cost of health related to taking care of those same employees, as well as situations regarding alcohol and drug abuse. As part of your job in recognizing the causes of workplace stress and understanding the effect stress has on employees and businesses, think of the direct impact you could have not only on your business, but on the lives of your employees by taking on this issue head on. So, during COVID-19, just to give you some information about drug and alcohol abuse. During that period, one of the ways in which people chose to deal with their stress was the consumption of alcohol. The American Addiction Centers conducted a nationwide survey to evaluate the occurrence of alcohol use by employees while they're working from home. Because we talk about workplace stress. Now, keep in mind, since COVID-19, the workplace is not just the physical building or structure that people are used to going to, the brick and mortar, but it is now extended to their home because there's so many employees that are working from home. Some of the interesting things that their investigation found was beer appears to be the drink of choice for people who are drinking while at home. So you have employees who are actually at home doing their work who are drinking. They found that over 1 in 3 respondents say they are likely to drink more alcohol while in isolation. And 1/5 of the respondents say they stockpiled alcohol for self-isolation. When looking at the Midwest states, the survey discovered a significant percentage of employees engaged in drinking alcohol while on the job, especially while working from home. Some of these figures are staggering. I mean, you take a look at a state like Iowa, they had 47% of the people who, and again, the survey was anonymous, they said that they were engaged in drinking at home. Kansas, 47%. Nebraska, 44%. Oklahoma, 41%. Texas, we had 22%. These are people who are on the job and they're drinking while at home. again, as a result of the effects of stress because of COVID-19. Now, some of these individuals very well may have had a drinking problem before, but the stress associated with COVID-19 and the stressors along with it exacerbated that and caused such an increase. In fact, I remember the report said in the state of Hawaii, the number of people drinking on the job while working from home was over 50%. That's incredible. Then when you take a look and you break down, what's happening in terms of the types of liquor that or alcohol that people are drinking. If you look at the mid 2020, with people staying home, the stock market was in a slump. There was a lot of political uncertainty, and the economy was getting worse. While that was happening, alcohol sales actually continued to grow. And according to the Wine Industry Advisor, their June 23rd press release, a Nielsen report indicated that the year-over-year growth rate for the week ending June 6th showed a sales growth of 30.5% in spirits, 24% for wine, and over 22% for beer and malt flavored alcohol. In fact, during the peak in April 2020, alcohol e-commerce sales levels were 6 times higher than the comparable weeks of 1 year prior, primarily driven by the increase of new buyers of online alcohol purchases. Then you have a survey that was conducted of more than 1,000 people by the Addiction Policy Forum, found that 20% of respondents said that their family members have increased substance use since COVID-19 began. 4% reported overdoses, and 1% of those were fatal, according to the survey. The American Medical Association issue brief released in October 6th of 2020 stated that 40 states have reported increases in opioid-related mortality, as well as ongoing concerns for those with substance use disorders. The brief also stated that the nation's opioid epidemic has grown into a much more complicated and deadly drug overdose epidemic as a direct result of COVID-19. As a business, it's basic operational practices to evaluate safety considerations, conduct risk assessments, and implement mitigation strategies based on recognized hazards and the potential for workplace accidents and injuries. Due to COVID-19, businesses must now incorporate the calculus associated with workers who are now not reporting to the office and are working from home into that factor. This includes recognizing the potential for substance abuse while on the duty at home and identifying ways to addressing those workplace challenges. As a safety professional, something else you may want to consider. Think about those employees who may work from home, but they drive company vehicles. Maybe they're in a sales position or a service position. So they're now working from home. There's a significant increase in substance abuse, drug and alcohol abuse, and these individuals are going directly from home out to meet with customers. And although the list of things that we've identified as a result of workplace stresses on employees is not exhaustive, it does highlight how our society and culture has been impacted by COVID-19. And it's irrefutable that the pandemic, the lockdowns, and the social restrictions have contributed to a number of unforeseen side effects in the workplace. For instance, according to the Center for Disease Control internet survey of 5,412 anonymous respondents conducted in June of 2020, they found that 1 in 4 young adults between the ages of 18 to 24 considered suicide in the previous month due to the pandemic. The survey also revealed that 10.7% of the overall respondents reported seriously considering suicide, and then almost 31% of self-reported unpaid caregivers. These are people such as those who are caring for a family member at home, and 22% of essential workers said they harbored such thoughts in regards to suicide. The survey also revealed that roughly 30.9% of respondents said that they had symptoms of anxiety or depression, and approximately 26.3% of the respondents reported trauma and stress-related disorders because of the pandemic. Lastly, another 13.3% of respondents said that they had trauma or turned to substance abuse due to alcohol, including alcohol and prescription illicit drugs, to cope with the stress associated with the pandemic. So this is what your employees are turning to as a result of the stresses that they're feeling as a result of the pandemic. whether they're doing it at working at home or they're working in your standard business. The pandemic had also been associated with mental health challenges related to morbidity and mortality caused by the disease and mitigation activities, including the impact of physical distancing and stay at home orders. According to the Center for Disease Control, the COVID 19 lockdowns and the associated distresses led to an increase in substance abuse to be able to cope with. In fact, the report found that increased substance abuse and suicidal ideation were more prevalent among employed than unemployed respondents. Now, when I read that report, that actually surprised me. So they found that people who were working actually were more likely to be thinking about drug abuse and suicide than those who were unemployed, and among those who were essential workers versus non-essential workers. Take a look at this situation. As identified by NIAS, stressful workplace situations have been identified as a potential contributing factor in things such as suicide. So when you see an incident such as the workplace shooting at the Kent Moore Cabinet Manufacturing Company in Bryan, Texas, in I believe it was April of 2021, most of you probably remember hearing about that on the news, where we had that individual come into his workplace and shoot a number of individuals. You had one dead and 6 were injured. Um, you had that employee who was killed, and we have to think about what part did workplace stresses play in that incident. So we've identified the existence of a potential workplace safety concern that has been identified as having a potential impact on employees. The most logical question would be, if an employee suffers an incident that can be directly attributed to the workplace, is it compensable under workers' compensation in Texas? And the answer is generally no. Although stress is real and the impact it has on employees is real, the workers' compensation laws in Texas generally do not allow for compensation claim under Section 408.006 of the Texas Labor Code. But there are some exceptions. Under Section 504 of the Texas Labor Code identifies that there are compensable situations that could potentially exist. 504.019 of the Texas Labor Code identifies what those exceptions are, and they generally fall into 3 basic categories. Number one, you have your first responders. Employees that are first responders. Labor Code recognizes their unique situation that they're potentially faced with on a daily basis as part of their job, as well as the impact these situations can have on the first responder. Think, for example, first responders that arrived at the mass casualty event, such as 9/11, or the mental trauma a single event, such as that a first responder would face during a mass casualty event or responding to a plane crash. Therefore, they may qualify for compensation under the worker compensation rules. Second category is an employee that it personally experiences workplace violence, such as being shot or assaulted in the workplace. Depending upon how the stress manifests itself and impacts the employee, this single event has the potential to be compensable under the Texas Labor Code. And third, an employee that is a witness to a workplace violence or traumatic event, such as witnessing a coworker caught in a machine press, impaled by a forklift, or even dying in a fire. Last year I was doing a presentation for an organization, and we were talking about emergency evacuation. And I was able to show a video of workers at a plant that had caught fire. And one of the situations that took place is that a young lady who had recently been hired and was working for the company got trapped on the 3rd floor. And there were several men who were standing outside who were able to escape from the building, standing and watching this young lady while the fire was raging. They couldn't get to her. The fire and emergency teams could not get to her in time. And they literally watched her burn to death. That's the kind of traumatic event that someone who witnesses something in the laws in the state of Texas could be potentially they could be compensated for under workers' compensation. Now, understand the laws of workers' compensation are different in different states. So again, be familiar with the rules and regulations that apply if you happen to be in a different state. So What are some things your company can do to prevent and reduce the stress in the workplace? First, your leadership must recognize that the problem exists and that there is a potential impact on the business and be willing to make effective changes to address the issue. Again, this is where you, as the safety professional, have the opportunity to shine. Your daily work, your sphere of influence, and consistent interaction with employees gives you a clear line of sight as to what's going on in the workplace, as well as ears to the ground to how employees are really doing. Therefore, it's your responsibility to capitalize on the unique position you're in to influence change in the workplace. That may include meeting with executives or the HR department about you spearheading an employee-based team, or employees how employees feel, and hear how have their voices heard in the decision-making process affecting their jobs. Now that COVID restrictions are being loosened, this could be a really great time. And during the meeting, heard there were some opportunities for some social events for the South Texas chapter to get together. Whether it's networking or just getting together and having some fun together to build that team, that build that camaraderie. Those are the same types of things you should be looking for to doing in your company. What are some things that you could do within your company to bring your team together? What are some team events, whether that we do them in-house or if we take it off campus? This could be something as simple as a bowling event, which would be really inexpensive. Or even for those who like, now personally, I don't golf, but I will go to Top Golf and hit and swing and hit that ball. Talk about a stress reliever. You go out there and hit the ball, and you get to hang out with some of your friends, your colleagues. You get to have a good time. You get some great food, and it's a wonderful event. There's so many different things that can be done in an event such as that, and that builds the team up, that helps create those interpersonal relationships, that helps repair some of the damage that has been done because of these lockdowns. What are some of the other things that can be done? Your company can do to prevent stress? They can recognize that challenges exist and that they're very real. And there's a direct and indirect cost associated with them. Your company may want to take into consideration the responsibilities an employee has off duty and offer some flexibility. I know there's a lot being asked of companies that are still around, and that means that there's a lot being asked of employees. Is there something your company can do if there is an employee that has some off-duty considerations with family that maybe we could take into consideration that would reduce, because the mental stress that employee is going through during the day at work, trying to get their job done when so many people have quit, who have left, and then they're also thinking about things that are going on at home. So those off-duty responsibilities, what can the company do to help them? So offer some flexibility, ensuring that the employees receive proper training and continuous development in order to better equip them in the performance of their duties, or even to help prepare them for advancement. Train your supervisors to recognize the signs and symptoms of stress and to include the symptoms of substance abuse. Keep in mind, the workers that they're dealing with are not just the workers that are inside your brick and mortar building. What about those workers who are working from home? Also, you need to remind and talk with your employees about and make sure that they're aware of the accessibility and the benefits of your company's employee assistance program. Most EAP programs offer confidential counseling for employees and their family members as part of the standard benefits package. Or maybe your company's benefits package includes assistance with dependent care. They we know how it happens. It even happens with us. You sign up, you do your annual registration for all of your healthcare benefits and your packages and everything. And so you're paying for all of that, or the company is giving that to you. And you don't necessarily read through the 1,000 pages of everything that includes your benefit package. And they very well may have forgotten that there are things that the company is providing for them that would help them with some of those stressors that they're experiencing offline and off duty. So remind your employees about some of those company benefits and help them realize that there's assistance out there. Being involved with and accessible to the employees during your monthly safety meetings, or when you're out doing site inspection, gives you again a unique opportunity to hear about some of the pain points they're experiencing at work, or even personally. This opens up the door for you to point them in the direction of resources and assistance that they may not even be aware of. And lastly, identify and educate employees on other resources that may be available to them in your local community. Some thoughts. As a safety professional, you see the true value of you bring to your company is so much bigger and so much more than your education, your certification, being able to read and understand loss reports, developing a new training class, or presenting quarterly safety stats. The greatest value you bring to your company is your relationship and reputation with the employees in the field or on the production line. The man or woman on the production line doesn't care about the number of letters after your name. They care about whether or not you care about them. Are you looking out for them? Are you doing everything you can to ensure they go home at the end of the day to their families? Think about it. When was the last time you saw, as part of the job description for a safety professional position, must care about employees? Think about that. But that's what we all do, as it's core to everything we do in safety. And if you don't think that that's your job, let me just say, you're in the wrong profession. Does that mean that someone who doesn't care can't technically do the job? No. I've been in the industry for over 25 years. I've seen dozens of people who could technically do the job, who did not care about the employees, but they weren't impactful. They didn't make a difference. They could technically do the job, and that's about all that they were expecting to do. But is that what employees need? When a company doesn't have a safety professional with a servant attitude, a person that doesn't put their heart into the job, you end up with a lose-lose-lose situation. This is true about every company. No matter how big or small, the most valuable asset in that company is your employees. So when you make your employees the focus, the reason, and the energy behind everything you do, it's a win for you. It's a win for your employees. It's a win for your customers, and it's a win for your company. So lean into your greatest strengths and be passionate about your work. Love what you do. Give and sacrifice for your employees. Be tough on your employees. Set high standards for them and expectations, and they'll reach. Because if you set the standards and expectations low, they're going to reach them. But at the same time, remember to give them the tools they need to be successful. Let what you do be about the employees. Caring about them will make you a better, more effective, and impactful safety professional. And for years to come, you'll be able to look back upon your professional life and work with no regrets. We at Premier Workforce Training want to thank everyone for attending this afternoon's meeting. Our goal is to provide value-added training and development services as business. Let us know what we can do to assist you with training and safety programs. Thank you. Questions?
Anybody have questions for Lee?
I just hear a bunch of booing in the background. What is that all about, Larry?
There was a lot of applause on this end. Hey, Lee, I want to thank you for the presentation. I'm going to date myself. I think it was 2010 that I attended a professional development conference. You know, one of the speakers went up one time, and he was talking about stress, and he was comparing stress in the 1800s to the 2000s. And we all think back about the pioneer days, you know, crossing the prairies and having to find food and having to find water. And up on the board, he made a list of what they had to do in the 1800s. And, you know, grandma had to get up early and get the fire going so that she could cook the biscuits for her husband. And then once she got the biscuits cooked, she had to go retrieve water from the creek and to feed the animals. And when he finished that list, there was like 5 or 6 things that needed to be done that day to sustain life, and that was it. And then he started making a list of what you needed to do in 2000, and the list just went on and on and on. And the moral or the reason for his speech was we think about how hard it was back in the 1800s to survive, and we don't think about everything that has to occur today to survive. We think it's easier. His point was it was not. And I think back in my last few days at Liberty Mutual and all the passwords and IDs that I had to keep a separate list on. And that was all before COVID. So your presentation today talking about the stresses that COVID created was fantastic. And I loved how you tied in the drug abuse and the alcohol increase that occurred when people were out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah,
Some
and
of
the
those
suicide.
numbers, some of those numbers floored me. I would have never put Texas that low compared to Kansas and Iowa. But when I lived in Kansas, I found out that there were people that they didn't have anything else to do, so they started a lot of alcohol and drug abuse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
fantastic presentation today.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. In fact, one of the things that's going on now with the fentanyl that's coming across the border, it's actually even worse. And there are even more deaths because not only are people taking fentanyl, but the drugs that people are taking are being laced with fentanyl, and they're taking it, and it's causing even more deaths. So it's the problem hasn't gotten better because of restrictions and loosening as we've gotten on with COVID. It's actually gotten worse.
Well, the other point that you pointed out that I never thought about, the people that are working have more stress than the people that were not working.
That's exactly
and on the
right.
surface, that seems like common sense that the people working have to deal with home life and work life. But I bet you there's a whole nother speech that can be given on why the people working had more stress than the people that did not work.
That's exactly right.
And the one final point that you talked about, the workplace violence that occurred and
Yes.
what was going on. And then I heard you say that going and hitting a golf ball relieves stress. Now, some people don't have an opportunity to hit the golf ball, so they went in and hit their boss, I guess, at work, creating workplace violence. But physical exertion is stress relief, so everybody needs to go exercise to relieve that stress.
Yeah, they most. I mean, there were the statistics that are out there are just shocking. I mean, I could have gone on and on. I mean, we look at the increase in spouse abuse, but I was like, okay, this is getting a little dark, so I had to back off because there's so much more information I could have given. But yes, there's so much that went on because of the stresses that people are experiencing at work, the workload, whether or not I'm going to have a job, how my pay is being affected. And you're thinking, look, there are millions and millions of jobs that are open. Yes, but maybe not any of those jobs, or you take on the new associated with taking on.
Well, again, we want to thank you today. And the one final word that I have, and something that you said in your meeting, was when a company, and I'll relate that to an individual, takes on a servant attitude, that's when the world wins. Everybody wins when it's taking care of others ahead of yourself. One of the slogans that I always liked was "We before me," and I think we all need to do a better job of that. So thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for the excellent presentation today.
It has been my pleasure. I truly want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to come alongside and partner with you guys and share this information. This is my heart. I love safety. I love training and developing employees. And I know there are businesses that I've had the opportunity to meet with who, again, this information is new to them and they never looked at it from this perspective. So being able to share this with individuals out there that they can take it back to their business and they can implement some of the changes and recommendations, and hopefully that's going to have a positive impact with their employees and with their companies, and it's going to make it easier for them while they're working.
Fantastic. And one final thing, and I may have missed this. Eddie Wilson, did you get to introduce yourself before we started?
No, sir, I did not. I jumped on a little bit later than after the introductions were done. So, yeah, I'm Eddie Wilson. I'm the post shop manager here at CMC Southern Post in San Marcos, Texas. So.
Fantastic. And did I miss somebody else? There's a phone number, 6279. Phone number 6279. Okay, so with that, we will end today's meeting. Everybody go out and have a great weekend coming up, or a great week. Thank you.
All righty. You guys have a wonderful day, and thank you very much.